Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 965, and today's date is May 8th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been looking at many different economic indicators, and we've come to realize that the United States government central bankers, with the help of corporations, they have the ability to create these incredible bubbles in the housing market, in the auto industry, in the student loan market, and many other areas. And what we're seeing is they use these bubbles to convince the world and the people here in the United States that everything is fine, the economy's doing well, and everything is great. Now, they keep pushing the idea that the auto industry is doing absolutely fantastically well. And they keep saying that, yes, this year auto sales are going to be incredibly well, everything's going to be fantastic. Now, remember, they brought in a lot of subprime people to take out loans. Remember, every time someone purchases a car, they're getting loans. They're not using their own money. Most of the time, you have to put 0% down, and you can walk off a lot with the car, and then we see delinquencies and everything else, and the car is repossessed. But what's very interesting is that sales of automobiles is declining right now. They're not that hot. And coming from the factories, what we're seeing is that they need to cancel the second and third quarter schedules overtime. And what that means and what that tells us is that they're not producing as many cars as everyone thinks, and they're not selling as many cars as everyone thinks. Actually, GM and Ford, they have canceled their scheduled overtime shifts. And what's very interesting about automobile sales is that everyone thinks that, oh, you go into a dealer, you buy a car, they count that as a sale. No, that's not how they count this. What they've done is they switch things up. And the way they record sales, when any car or truck is shipped to a dealer, that is a sale. So they can channel stuff, dealers' lots, by providing them more and more cars and trucks. Those are counted as all sales. So inventory piles up. Everyone thinks, wow, there's a lot of sales out there. But the whole thing is an illusion. Once again, we find out that it's completely an illusion. Now, we see Russia and China, they're trying to de-dollarize from the United States. They don't want their economy intertwined with the U.S. economy and the dollar economy. And we see right now that Russia, they are taking the next big step here to de-dollarize, and they're going to be killing the petrodollar. And they're going to be creating a ruble-based pricing of their domestic produced oil. And they're almost there. Spymex, which is the St. Petersburg International Mercantile Exchange, they're actively courting international oil traders to join their emerging future market. Step by step, what we're seeing is Russia and China and other emerging economies, they're taking steps to reduce their dependency on the U.S. dollar. Now, why are they doing this? They realize that the economy of the United States is rapidly deteriorating. The dollar is at its end game, and they're getting prepared and ready for a new economic system. And this is why the U.S. is out there pushing and provoking these countries into war, because they don't want to give this up. The wealthy, the elite, they make a lot of money off of this. It doesn't help the people of the United States. It doesn't help the people throughout Europe. It doesn't help the people anywhere. Because what we're seeing right now is that this system was completely designed to build up debt, steal the wealth from the people, steal the wealth from countries, and turn this worthless paper and ink into real hard assets. And this is what central bankers do. Now, we talk a lot about the government and all the different agencies spying on the American people. And we know what they like to do is they like to go to the young generation and brainwash these individuals into thinking that this is the new normal. Just like they're using Common Core to convince them that this is how history actually happened. Rights are not yours to keep. They are privileges. They're rewriting some of the amendments, and they're getting our youth very used to accepting spying, getting very used to handing over all their information like fingerprints, eye scans, DNA. They're getting them used to having them searched at any time the police or government officials want to search them. And we're seeing that they're bringing this down to the school level. And they're introducing biometric scanners in schools. Now, they're going to start off using this in the lunchrooms because they're saying the students, they don't have the ability to carry around a card to purchase lunch. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up this biometric identification system, which will then scan everyone's fingerprint, and it will allow them to purchase their lunches. It'll make it a lot easier, and it'll be very nice to have their fingerprints on record. We see in Illinois, the Geneva Unit District 304, they have recently installed the biometric scanners in their cafeterias, and each student will be going ahead and placing their finger on this, and they'll be recorded. Now, they're going to be able to use this information to track the students. It'll be personal to them, and then it'll be distributed to other agencies. So we can see already they're starting at a very young age to follow the youth around and get them used to giving up their biometric data, because we see this coming right now. We know with the real IDs, where DHS wants all the states to come in compliance, where they can collect your facial scans, they can collect your retinal scans, they can collect your DNA, your fingerprints. They're going to put a barcode, an RFID chip in the real IDs, and all this is going to be correlated up to a single database. And this is to track everyone. And what they normally do is they start off with the young, they get them indoctrinated, used to this, and they make them feel like this is normal. And this is exactly what they're doing. We see the U.S. is continually provoking Russia. What they're doing at this point is they are transporting tanks from Bulgaria to Georgia in preparation for a military exercise. And what the U.S. is doing is they're loading up Abram tanks onto ferries in Varna, Bulgaria. They're going to be bringing them over to Georgia. And these war games will include about 650 U.S. troops, 150 British troops, 500 soldiers of the Georgian army. And we can see this is right up against the Russian border, and they're using it to provoke. We see the U.S. is bringing in 20 new military helicopters in the southern part of Yemen. 15 Apache and 5 Black Hawk choppers have been sent to Al Anad military base in southern Yemen. We know that there's 100 Rangers that are being brought into Yemen. There are more ground troops on their way. And at this point, what we're seeing is the U.S. is building up their ground force in Yemen. Now, the Yemeni people, they're completely against the U.S. troops being deployed in their country. And we're seeing this in Iraq. We're seeing it in Libya. And we know it's not welcomed in Syria. But we're starting to see all these countries, they're starting to push back and say, you know something, we don't want this whatsoever. Now, Russia, they are bringing in a Russian Black Sea Fleet patrol ship, and they're taking it from the Black Sea area, from Sevastopol, and they're going to bring it into the Mediterranean. And the ship is called Ladny, and it's going to join their other ships that are in the Mediterranean right now. And currently in the Mediterranean, Russia has about a dozen warships and support vessels of the Pacific, Black Sea, and Northern fleets in the Mediterranean at this point. So it seems that they think that something is going to occur in this area, and they're bringing more ships in. Now, of course, we all know what's going on here. We realize, we understand that the U.S. is getting ready for a major ground offensive in Syria, Iraq, and this entire Middle Eastern section. This is why we see additional warships coming in. This is why the U.S. has warships off the coast of Libya. This is why we see the coalition forces that were using ships close to the Mediterranean to say that, oh, they're there for the refugee crisis. NATO has their ships. Germany has their ships. And these are all being sailed down to this area closer to the point of where we're going to see this major event coming very soon. Now, we understand that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, they've been bombing hospitals over and over and over. And there was a recent resolution, 2286, which is co-sponsored by 80 member nations, which now condemns attacks on medical personnel. Now, I don't know why we need this, because when was it okay to attack medical personnel and facilities? But they came up with this resolution 2286, and now any country that does this will be charged with a war crime right now. So 80 countries right now just slammed the U.S. over continually bombing hospitals. They've done this in Afghanistan, they've done this in Yemen, and they've done this in Syria. And every time they turn around, they say, no, it wasn't us, it wasn't us. And we see that, yes, it was the United States continually doing this. And they're continually doing this because what they're doing is they're trying to tell the people by hitting the infrastructure, by hitting the civilians, listen, if you remove our puppet government, you are going to pay the price. And this is exactly what they're doing. Now we see the Russian forces, they are setting up a new military base in Palmyra. They brought in the Pantsir S-1 anti-aircraft system. It is deployed now in this area. And we can see that Russia is trying to control the entire area, push back the terrorists, and they're continually winning the battles in all these areas. And this is why the U.S. wants peace. This is why the U.S. wants a ceasefire. It looks like the ceasefire has extended now for 72 hours in Aleppo. And Senator Richard Black, U.S. State Senator from Virginia, he claims, and I completely agree with him on this, that the U.S. government has likely prevented the Syrian government's armed forces from recapturing the city of Aleppo from al-Qaeda and al-Nusra. And this is exactly what they've done. It's a stall tactic. And he said, it is clear to me that what is happening is we are trying to desperately slow down the Syrian army advance, which is on the verge of crushing al-Nusra and al-Qaeda in Aleppo. And this is a strategic location, and the U.S. cannot let this happen, and this is why they were pushing for a ceasefire, and they want it extended. They're buying their time. Black further alleged that the Geneva peace talks are being carried out with the goal of preserving the anti-Assad terrorist organizations. Absolutely. So what we're seeing right now is the U.S. is using the ceasefire, the peace talks, as a stall tactic, because their main goal is to try to hold their positions in Syria, bring in more troops, set up the air bases so they can have this major offensive coming up in August. Now we see all over the corporate media that they're saying that this bombing of this refugee camp is a war crime, and they want the UN to investigate this. Now again, they have absolutely no proof that Russia or Syria did this, but they're using the propaganda saying that, oh, most likely it probably was Russia or Syria. Now, Russia and Syria, they didn't have any warplanes in the area whatsoever. And when you look at the video and you look at the pictures of this area, you see no craters whatsoever. This was contained in a very small area, and it looks like it was a fire. It doesn't even look like it was bombed, actually. It looks like it was a fire, and they moved things around. So to me, it's starting to look like a setup. And of course, the location of the refugee camp is right on the border of Turkey. Now, what are they using this for? Well, of course, to demonize Assad, to demonize Russia. All they have to do is mention war crime. People already in their minds think, oh, it's a war crime. Who did it? Now, of course, the U.S. can't present any proof whatsoever. They have none. But they just have to mention it. This is how the propaganda works. And it looks like what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, Assad and Russia, look how evil they are. We need to protect these people in these areas, and maybe we should, set up some type of zone in these areas to protect the refugees, the civilians in these areas. And we can see at this point, this is a complete setup. And this is what they really wanted from the beginning. I know Obama, the corporate media is out there saying, we do not, it's not right to have a safe zone. We don't agree with Turkey. It's always the opposite. If you notice, they're building everything up in northern Syria, having the air bases, the troops, these events to try to convince everyone that this is something. So they're really building out a safe zone area. They're bringing in military assets. They're extending the runways in 2 bases in northern Syria. They're bringing in more and more troops. All of this is in preparation. And we need to watch this very carefully because we're going to see the Middle East, it's going to be a complete disaster in this area. Warships are on their way. Russia's bringing in more warships into the Mediterranean because they realize that this is not going to end well. And the U.S., they're backed against the wall here. They have no alternative. They're losing in Syria. They're losing control of Yemen. They're losing control of Lebanon. They're losing control of Libya. And they have all the troops, all the ships, all the military assets from the coalition forces all built up in this area. And they're getting ready for this main event. And this most likely will bring us into World War III. Unless Russia or something else occurs that stops it once again. But I think they're going to be going all out this time. I don't think they're going to let another country stop it. They're going to use false flags. They're going to do whatever they possibly can to get this war started. Because as we know, this economy, it is deteriorating. It is falling fast. Gold is rising. And the entire system is getting ready to collapse. And they don't want this to collapse without them controlling the collapse itself. Because if it's uncontrolled, they will not be able to blame another country or group. And this is what they're shooting for at this point. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.